my name's Allison. I'm the Programs, Outreach, and Youth Services Manager here at Monterey County Free Libraries. Today for Self-Care Sunday, I roped in my boyfriend Steve, who is a trained chef, and he is going to show us how to make bread.
Hi everyone, my name is Steve, and today we're going to be making a pretty simple bread recipe. Not many ingredients go into our bread, but today we're going to be using whole wheat flour, all-purpose flour, some sugar, warm water, salt, and a package of active dry yeast. In our bowl, we've started to activate our yeast. We've added 1 package mixed with 2 cups of warm water and 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 tablespoon of salt. It's important to note that the water can't be too hot. The yeast is living, and too hot of water will kill it, and your bread will not rise. So after about 10 to 15 minutes, your yeast will have risen a little bit inside the bowl. You'll notice that it gets a little frothy. If you don't see any frothiness to it, it means your water was probably too hot, and I urge you to start over. If the yeast dies, like I was saying, you will not get any rise to your bread, and it will be quite dense. But the next step, we are going to be using a KitchenAid mixer. This recipe can be made by hand if you don't have one of these. It will take a little longer. You will have to do about 15 to 20 minutes of kneading, but this is going to make it much easier. Our recipe today calls for 5½ cups of flour. 1/2 cup I'm going to be using the whole wheat flour because it gives it a better flavor and texture. Adding too much whole wheat flour though can make your bread real dense. We don't want to do that. So we're going to start by adding just 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour to our mixture here. I've attached our dough hook to our KitchenAid, and this is going to help us with incorporating and doing a little bit of kneading in the process. So 1/2 cup at a time just to incorporate. We're going to do this slowly so that it gets well mixed and it doesn't fly everywhere. We want to be as clean as possible here today. So now that we've added all of our flour, we're going to let this go. We want it to start pulling from the sides of the bowl. If you feel that it's sticking too much, you can stop and spatula the sides of the bowl, but the dough hook should do all the work. We're going to let this go for roughly 5 to 10 minutes until it's well mixed and kneaded. And then we'll move on. So after about 10 minutes in the mixer, our dough is ready to go. It has pulled from the sides. I have a well-floured surface here because we're going to do a little bit of hand kneading and we just want to get it in shape. And we're just going to knead this for a couple of minutes. Pulling it over and turning it on itself. So at this point, we're going to add in some rosemary to our bread. You can add in whatever you want. I probably should have mixed this in beforehand, but it's sitting right in front of me and that sounds like a really good idea. So I have some dried fresh rosemary here. I'm just going to crumble and shake, add this into our dough, and I'm going to knead it in just for some extra flavor.
It was my fault. I said I wanted it in because I was staring at it while I was filming.
Okay, so I'll just add a little more. And what we're going to do here is we're going to shape this into a ball. Sort of turning the sides down and into itself. We have our mixer bowl here. I'm going to add just a few drops of olive oil to it and lube up the sides because we're going to let our dough ball rest in here, but obviously we don't want it to stick. So this is going to go in here. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap, and this is going to sit about 1.5 hours, 2 hours to rise. If you want, you can do this the night before, and after it's risen, you can put it in the fridge overnight. Make sure it's tightly covered. We want to keep all the moisture out. But the rule of thumb with bread is the longer it rests and rises, the more flavor you're going to have. So we've let our dough rise for a little bit. We're going closer to about 1.5 hours, and it's doubled in size. There are options here for your rise. I mentioned earlier, the longer you let it rise, the more flavor you're going to get. If you decide that you don't want to wait and you want a quicker bake time, you can let it rise about 45 minutes to an hour, and this is going to give you a lighter dough, a lighter bread. You're going to get more of a crust on the outside that's flaky, rather than a sort of a harder, crunchier crust. So I have a floured surface here, and we're going to take this ball out. And we're going to punch it down just a little bit here, get some of that air out. It's going to shrink down. What I want to do now is cut this in half, because we're going to do 2 loaves with this. And the one I'll just put back in the bowl. We're going to give this just a quick little knead, just like we did before. When we have a flat piece of dough here, we're going to take it and fold it in on itself on all the corners. And this last one we're going to take and we're going to wrap it all the way around and form this little loaf. And in the oven, this will expand about twice the size of that. But what we need to do is cut a couple of slits in it so it has a way to expand so it doesn't spill out everywhere. So we're going to take a knife here that's sharp and just score it along the diagonal. And this will allow it to expand more evenly when we cook it. The other trick is we're going to spread a little bit of cold water on the outside, and this will help constrict everything, and then eventually help give it some moisture and get a nice crust as well. So I got a little cold water on my hand, and I'm gonna rub these 2 loaves with just a little bit on there. If you have a pastry brush, that works just as well. These are gonna sit just a couple of minutes while we get the rest of our cooking utensils squared away. So today I'm gonna be using a cast iron Dutch oven to cook this bread in. I know that not everybody has one of those. So there are several options that you can do. You can bake your bread on just a regular cookie sheet. You probably would want to do that with a hot water bath at the bottom, like you would a cheesecake, so you can get some moisture in. The whole point of the Dutch oven is that it's going to keep the moisture in and help the bread rise. You can bake this in a loaf pan if you have a bread loaf, and again, the time and temperatures will vary for those types of things. For the Dutch oven, I've set this at 450 degrees. And I have put the Dutch oven in to soak in the heat, so when I throw this bread in, it will get a nice hard sear at the bottom. So that's really important. If you're using a different option though as well, for something with the water bath, you want to set it about 350 degrees. And on a sheet pan, that will take roughly about 35 to 40 minutes in something like a Dutch oven. Because you want to develop a nice crust, you're going to go about 40 to 60 minutes. But keep an eye on it. For something like this, a basic white bread, it can take the heat and it can take quite a bit of time, and it's pretty forgiving.
How long did you have the Dutch oven in the oven for?
For the preheat time, I've done it about 20 minutes.
And what the heck is a water bath?
A water bath, basically, you're going to get a pan of warm water on the bottom shelf or bottom rack of your oven while you're baking something on top, and what it does is it's going to take some of the moisture out of the water and present steam inside the oven, so that way you're not overcooking and drying out anything that you're cooking in there.
It beeps.
It's ready to go. So in my Dutch oven, I'm going to pour just a little bit of cornmeal in there. This is going to create a little bit of a gap for the loaf of bread, and it's going to create some resistance to burning, just in case that happens. And then our loaf of bread is going to go right in there.
You do them one at a time?
Do them one at a time. Like I said, this will expand. You'll get about doubling in size from cooking. So this is hot. I've got my mittens here, my pot holders. The lid is hot. I'm going to put this on there, and this is going to go in the oven for about 35 minutes. And then we'll take a look at it. Okay, so after about 35, running on 40 minutes, let's see what happened.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, so we've got a nice crust on the outside. It's expanded well. Let's get this out of there. See, the bottom of our bread has a nice crust to it. Nice hollow sound. I think this is ready to go. We're probably gonna wanna let this rest for about 10 minutes, just so everything gets settled in place, and then we can cut it and eat it. Okay, it's been 10 minutes, so let's cut into our bread and see how it turned out. Oh, look at that steam. A little great crust. It's got a nice crumb on the inside. No big holes because we didn't let it rest a very long time, or rise. But it's all ready and we're excited to eat it.
And that's how you make a very simple bread.
Yum.
Time to eat. Thanks for joining us for Self-Care Sunday. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.